Welcome to Transformers, the podcast about how business people and policymakers are creating a sustainable future. I'm your host, Kari Aina Eik. My guest today is Kari Aina Eik. Kari has dedicated her life to bridging the worlds of the United Nations, global markets and cities, and has worked to establish several UN and international programs for sustainable cities, amongst them United Smart Cities and United for Smart and Sustainable Cities Implementation Program. She has past 8 years been acting Secretary General of the Organization for International Economic Relations, and now also leads a sister organization, United Cities and the United Cities Fund, jointly set up together with the SDG Impact Fund, with the aim to uplift 10,000 cities with resources and methods to achieve the SDGs. She is on the board of the Global Council for SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, and is the vice chair of the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, focus group on environmental efficiency for artificial intelligence and emerging technologies. She lectures at Harvard School of Design, the executive program Net Zero Cities, and lives and works from Vienna. Welcome to Transformers, Kari.
Thank you so much.
We are now in the time of the COP27 conference in Egypt. Warnings are there with 3.5 degrees Celsius scenarios. And all around the world we see now how catastrophic climate change is. Cities generate 70% of our global greenhouse gas emissions, and today 56% of the world's population, 4.5 billion, lives in cities. This trend is expected to continue, and nearly 7 to 10 people will live in cities 2050. And a recent study from Yale and Nanjing University show that urban areas are warming quicker than rural areas by 29%. So, Kari, with your perspective of the role of cities, will they or can they deliver in line of the Paris Agreement?
If you ask me now and how we are set up now, it would be a definitely no, not able to achieve not the Paris Agreement, but also the Sustainable Development Goals. And that's for me on one clear view of the methods because we're not using the same method. We are using all different methods. We are not going in the same direction. And we have this framework that we are supposed to have as, I would say, guiding principles to the SDGs and also the Paris Agreement. But we are still struggling to make a systematic method to really bring forward this scaled approach, because that's what really we're talking about. We need to be much, much stricter in walking the talk here and what we want to achieve.
We know that the Paris Agreement is a sign up from nations, and one of the key elements or methods in the Paris Agreement is the National Action Plans, the NDCs. And nations have to plan for their higher ambitions national actions. And can you understand how the cities can push the nation to reach higher ambitions?
That's what we see around the world, that you need the top down but also bottom up approach to be able to achieve these agreements and these targets. And I see that there is a lot of movement in cities around the world. There's a lot of incredible work happening. It's just now to put the pieces together and share more of this experience between cities. But I think that's exactly the possibility we have to achieve those targets, to work with cities, and cities taking the lead, because a lot of the national systems and a lot of the institutions that we have today, I think that's one of our biggest hurdles to be able to achieve these targets, is our institutions and structures of course, we need that, but now we need to really rethink how these structures are really facilitating such targets and such ambitions and such goals, which we need to have. So I think what we see here, I mean, I've been also working very much in Norway in the past year, is that actually cities really taking the lead on pushing methods for achieving the targets here. And yeah, I think that's the way also forward.
Well, let us go into the work you are doing and see if we can get some examples. You named Norway here, and give us an insight of some of the work you are doing to give advice and help cities to be really change makers.
From my own experience, I mean, for the past 10 years, working on cities and having the Sustainable Development Goal coming in 2015, and how can we hands-on work on those key elements, because it's also very easy to get lost in all the things that needs to happen. So we have been focusing on, I would say, 3 main elements that we think is the key to achieve these targets and these goals. And that is, first of all, we need to really know where we are to know where we're going. And it's, I would say, you know, to use the blunt term of it's scary where we are today in terms of knowing exactly where we are today, but also what do we need, where do we need to be in 2030? So everything we do is to gather those facts that is already on the table, because it's not like it's not there. It's, you know, in some places of the world, of course, there needs to be some serious capacity building on data management and data collection, and we need to support those processes. But basically, in most places around the world, there is data, and there is so much data that we're not using. If we would use this data for good and for really putting this into a process, we would basically have everything we need. So it's, first of all, using data and facts. And we have also, through the UN programs like the U4SDC program, which has done incredible job developing a method for collecting data. So it's a KPI set for smart sustainable cities that we've been working with for many, many years. It's also these type of tools, and there's many organizations who's done enough job in setting standards and KPIs, developing KPIs for smart sustainable cities, but we need to now really start to use them, and in large scale. We need to have, you know, cities in every country we need regions in small and big cities into this mix. So that's the number one, data and facts, and everything we do is based on that. The second is we need to start to use these technologies we have available to make this data useful for us and also understandable. So we work very much with different technology providers, platforms, like simulations of city, digital twins. There's a lot of incredible tools that can de-risk a lot of those, I would say, decisions, but also make it very, very clear what is the priorities here. And it's also incredible engagement tools, because the more we can transparently share, the more our population would understand, you know, we need to do some different decisions in the future. So the second is really using technology. And the third is also using this technology for, I would say, scale up the financial flow, really to bridge the financials, all the available resources, and bring them into the concrete projects, really make these projects bankable and support cities in bringing resources into their cities. Because to achieve the SDGs and the Paris Agreement, you need really different, not just financial tools, but also totally different. You need to mix and match these different types of financial possibilities we have. So in those 3 categories we're working, but also then around that capacity building and sharing, because we think we share, we really don't share very much of those type of methods. So that's all in here. And we've been testing this out in many, many countries and cities in the past years. And as I was mentioning Norway now, this is a big hub for also our programs, bringing cities together, and cities in Norway and communities are doing an incredible job. But also we work in many other countries like Lebanon and African countries, Asian countries. And it's also been a very interesting, I would say, the last years to test out the methods and to see the geographical differences. But I always say, people ask me, you cannot compare and do the same method in a large city in Europe and then maybe a small community in Brazil. But I would say that there is more commonalities than there is differences.
Let's come back to Norway. I would like to ask you a little bit more about Trondheim and what you're doing there. But first, if you look at this, what you say, it's the data, the IT, the finance issues. How much is innovation in this process?
I think that's crucial, the innovation part of that. And I'm always saying that, you know, it's already here. It's probably been invented. There's probably been this innovation, but it's not really been brought into scale, right? So I think it's crossed the line of all the different areas that we're working on cities, but you need to always bring that aspect into the mix here. But I think our biggest challenge is to make it known that we have this possibility, and how do you then scale it and adapt it to the different cities that we are in.
Well, what are you doing in Trondheim?
Yeah, Trondheim is a city, I would say mid-Norway. It's the third largest city in Norway. And they've been very much advanced on implementing SDGs, having had incredible projects, also in a cooperation with international cities, working to see how they can develop energy positive cities, for example. This is a large EU project that they've been involved in together with 5 other cities in Europe. But they are also university cities, so work very close with the NTNU, the Norwegian Technical University, and have very, very, I would say, advanced programs on smart city and other related elements to implementing the SDGs. And also in the past years, Trondheim has had a UN center linked to the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, where they've also been working to I would say, more spread those methods and the knowledge and experience from Trondheim to cities all around Europe. So it's a very leaning forward city in terms of SDGs, and I would say in Norway as such is really one of the leading cities. But there's several really good hubs around Norway who is doing incredible work. And I said it's fine that Norwegian cities are getting closer to the targets, but if they don't share it, then you know, we are as far. So no, I think the Norwegian cities are also very, very interested in sharing their experience and seeing how they can support others.
Well, one of the issues how a municipality is structured, and you have the politician who take decision on policy and implementation structure, and we can also call it governance issues. Is the issue of governance important in this process of change?
Yeah, the whole process of governance and leadership as such, right? And how we on which basis do we make decisions? In which basis do we equip our decision makers to make those decisions that needs to be taken? I think the whole thing, I think for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals or the Paris agreements, we need a very, I would say, rethink of how these governance processes are set up to speed up the process. It will not be business as usual. And we've been testing different methods here, because what you need is not just, you need a new type of, I would not say use the word institution, but a new type of arena where you can bring those stakeholders to the table. And I remember I've been in so many meetings with mayors around the world, and they say, you know, there's coming this innovation, this technology, then the company's knocking on my door and they want to sell this technology to the cities, but you know, it needs to be integrated in the system, right? This cities has a lot of, it will never work this way. So you need to work together in a new way, and you need to be at the table. Of course, the government, the local government, or the decision makers on the public sector, but then also the private sector and the financial institution, but also the academia, other, I would say, supporting elements around this ecosystem. So it needs a new type of arena, and we think this is labs. This is our concept, that we set up labs and bring all these elements, are like a facilitating hand to bring those elements together around a table as a neutral partner. And I think that's also really what the UN is aiming to do, UN Habitat and others, to be a neutral hand, invisible hand in this, to bring those stakeholders together to really start to look into a common method for this.
Is that what you call system change in practice? Is that what you're doing?
That's exactly what I'm thinking of, because that's really what is needed. It is a system change.
Well, do we have enough with the bold leadership from the political parties in municipalities?
If that's enough? No, I don't think so. I think we need to equip those leaders that we have better. And I think tools like, for example, digital twins, where you immediately, you walk into a room, you can see your whole city in front of you. You can see, okay, this decision will lead to this, and this will lead to this, without maybe reading thousands of pages of document. I mean, this in itself will speed up the planning process and a lot of these decision-making processes. But I think it needs more. It needs leadership development across all sectors, public and private sector. I mean, we work a lot with the private sector, and there is fantastic, I would say, leading stars among the businesses in terms of thinking really at the core, bringing the sustainability aspect into the core of the business. But it's not enough, right? And it needs to be really an understanding that without really 100% thinking in these terms and in the sustainable, I would say, atmosphere, you will also not have a business in a few years, because it's not going to be something that people would like to be involved in.
That is one question around the political leadership and maybe more bold leadership, and but also civil servant in a municipality. Do they have the right tool to change and the rights to change and work cross-border?
I don't. What I've seen also through my experience is that there is it's only individuals, right? You have individuals in those as public service that is really dedicated and is doing incredible, work within their, municipalities. But it's not the competence, or I would say the knowledge. Truly the knowledge, and how do you integrate this into your area? I mean, take for example procurement. I think procurement is one of those areas that will be the most important to do really radical changes in how we do procurement. And of course, public sector is massively, important in terms of procuring a lot of those solutions into the cities, right? And they need to know what is there, what is available. And then you immediately come into compliance issues, because you cannot even almost talk so close to the businesses. So it's the whole system here is not set up right to speed up that process. So even though for example, here in the Nordics, I would say in the framework that you should, look into more sustainable solutions, procure this and that, there's more, requirements now that it's stricter. It's not really happening yet. And now in 2022, and it's on such a small scale that this is really taking into full consideration, because in the end, then, very often it ends on price, right? So the company winning on price, right? Instead of having maybe the most environmental friendly, solution into the mix here. So we need more confidence amongst public servants and to be part of this, I would say, the wave of sustainable, actions and solutions. And that requires cross-cut, lift of the whole knowledge in the public sector.
You named earlier also the question of finance. The Nordic countries has a very much of a local decision rights on taxation of the citizens, and the independency of decision making in the budget process. Is that something important for a municipality to have the rights to take decision on taxation and financing issues, go outside the box and talk with the businesses also as a part of finance tools in or implementation of action in the local municipality?
Where we are today in 2022 and where we are at this moment, we need a much, I would say, we need national really guidelines on this, right? And national mandatory, I would say, structures for this that could be implemented at the local level, right? Or should be, of course, implemented at the local level. But I think we will be much, that's why we can also be much quicker. If every municipality would do different and have different rules for this and that, I think this would prevent us to scale those solutions quicker, across the board. Because we would like to do now is really, we find a solution, we want to scale it, not in 3 cities, but in 300 immediately, right? And then you need, a lot of the same, frameworks. And I think some of the, for investors specifically, right? And I know the question was no more on citizens itself, but if you talk about investors, foreign investors coming into municipalities and helping setting up those infrastructure, for example, it needs to be very predictable what is there in terms of framework, as you know. So, and we see examples of that all the time, that the national governments are changing the frameworks, right? So this changes really a lot on I would say, for the foreign investors. And this is, of course, you just need to avoid as much as possible, especially now in the next years, if you want to scale in terms of sustainable solutions, these type of more new sectors coming up.
Yeah, the financing sector also, if you have the traditional culture of a budget in the municipality, and then you have investors who would like to help in the local municipalities financing system, then it comes to question of democracy and how you use budget as a steering instrument for development. But isn't that the need of sort of new views of how you finance system locally?
Yeah, I think we need to, first of all, on the financial, I would say, capabilities of the cities is very varied around the world. There is, because the knowledge of even what type of investor or what type of funding is available, is even lacking at this level, right? Especially for smaller cities and municipalities. How can they have a capacity to follow? And because this also the landscape is changing quick, right? So we need to facilitate this for the municipalities and cities to know what is really available, right? But then it's also the next step. How do you actually make your project? I would say de-risk your projects, that you get the trust from investors and the financial, I would say, partners into the mix here. And I think so much has been done wrong in terms of this trust, because I came just from a call earlier today, and they were talking about the trillions that is parked somewhere, not finding the projects, right? Because there's a massive lack of, I would say, it's not just the trust, it's really the whole system. That it's not, ready for the funding in here, or the financial aspects of it.
Do you think that the pension funds or green bonds can be interesting for municipalities in a higher level than it is today?
I think so. If we look at it as on a regional basis, and that's also for larger other financial institution, it needs to be scale on these things, right? It needs to be predictability. So we need to bundle those projects, and that's what we want to do now with the cities. And not saying, here you have 3 cities who needs renewable energy systems, as we work on now in Lebanon, for example. I mean, of course, the whole country needs energy system, but you need to look at the whole region. So look at the whole, several countries in the Middle East, and look at 100 cities and who would need the same investment into a certain technology. Then it will be interesting. And you need to work with UN agencies and other to get the information, the data available, de-risk those things, and also bring around capacity and knowledge to those stakeholders. So you are talking at the same level, because that's what's missing now. It's the communication. Really, the communication is missing, but also the very concrete systems to bring these things together.
I've been looking at one city in Sweden that also was an early adapter of a strategy on climate change, and promised 1990s to be fossil free. And now they are going for a target of fossil free 2030. And they were very demanding on local decision-making rights, because if they didn't have the rights to take their own decision, they thought the process has been so much slower. They didn't refuse to have interaction with the national level. Do you think this type of thinking will help us to speed up and scale up?
I think so, because I think you need those leading stars of those cities who wants to move quicker. And that would be the best example for a lot of the other cities. So I think absolutely that's a positive, that we give those forerunners the possibility to be forerunners. And whatever the national state can facilitate for those forerunners to lead the way, because they will be always much more quicker than the national government will be able to facilitate these things. And we've been in, I would say, in a pilot sickness for the last 10 years. There's always a pilot. But I think now there's also been tested so much. I've seen in cities, not just in Sweden, but like in so many cities, that it's time to spread those messages out and be more than a pilot, yeah, and scale it also to other municipalities, cities within your own country.
What's the next step for networking between cities?
I think we need the networks more than ever. I think that's the whole, it's not the solution, but it's part of the solution. But we need to work differently within these networks. And with that, I mean, I think one of the first things these networks should do, and that is the cities, to sit together and decide on a very, very concrete step-by-step approach on what is needed now in those cities. And so everybody doing great things on their own, but it's not coordinated. And of course, thinking about the global coordinations of network, I think is absolutely possible. If you look into the global networks and then add in, regional networks, and also national networks, you cover a lot, right? And there is a lot of, I would say, there is events as we have now at COP and all these things, but it's the in-between. How do we actually bring these elements together and agree on a method? We need to agree on a method.
And the issue of global governance, is that a part of this?
I think this is coming top down and bottom up. It's absolutely on all level of governance. And I think, I always get so much questions related to the United Nations and the United Nations role. And I think has never been more a need of a global organization with the vision and I would say the mission of the United Nations. But we need a new type of global governance body to be able to handle those challenges that we are facing today, because it's not set up for that. As little as a national government is set up to really deal with these challenges, also that's the same at the global level.
Let us talk a little bit more about leadership. We touched that issue a little bit earlier. And if you look at the young generation and think about the advice you can give a young person that would like to be a change maker and a leader in the city's work for fight climate change and support sustainability agenda, what is the advice that you would like to give to the young people of today's societies?
First, I want to say, don't give up on us, on the leaders today and people that is, trying now to do this change, because I think that's the first thing I see. I have my own, my own children too. It's like, does it even matter? Can we actually turn this around? Right? This is, some of the key questions that young people are, I would say, really use the word struggling with at the moment. But I think to engage now, really engage with in your local community, because there is so many things you can and groups now surrounding those topics, if it's on climate or the SDGs or what this is, and together with the municipalities. I think I would bring myself as close as possible into that equation with the municipalities, and see how you can contribute. And of course, the more knowledge, the better, right? On what is possible here. We have also here in the whole United City internship program now with young people from all over the world that is now being skilled and trained in this method, really using those, as I said, these three elements of how we can use data, tech, and financing in more innovative ways. And hopefully they will also go back to their countries and spread this message further. But I think it's essential now to be active in it and not give up before we have seen that it's possible. And I'm a born optimist in this. I think it is possible to turn it around. I think we can turn it around in the next 10 years, but most people, I think, cannot even see what this would mean. As we on the trajectory now, it's of course not possible.
Do you see any young people around you that go into politics? Because you see that you need new influence in the political sector for good policy making. Are the interest in the politics of the work of climate change?
I think that's for sure a lacking area in the whole here. And I think that's also why it's so critical, because we need politicians with really skilled, and a lot of knowledge in these topics to be able to do this transformation. I think it's been lagging behind a lot, but I think in the next years to come, it requires a new type of leadership. And I really, really hope that we have young, ambitious leaders with the right mindset now coming into the different political parties and can support this transition.
So when you look at your own leadership under the years, what is the lesson learned?
I mean, as one person, you can only do as much, right? But if you can at least be a motivation for, doing more, I think that's always been my ambition, to do whatever I can and to bring like-minded into my equation and around me to see how can we contribute and make a difference into this. It's all about teams. It's all about motivated human beings who would like to be part of something more than themselves or more than just one job. So that's what also drives me in all of this, and to see that we can have some impact.
As a woman?
I mean, for sure, we need a better, balance here, because I think women and men bring different qualities to the table. But as such, I think it's quite, it's very, very good male leaders and good female leaders. And we need to bring those further up so we can get, better decisions globally.
Let's go to one of my final questions for you, Kari, and let's go back where we started this talk, the COP27 conference in Egypt, and you're going to be there. The Nordic countries and cities have been working very ambitious. What do you think the Nordic countries can do in Egypt, and what could they deliver for the global society?
We are going to showcase some of this work that's been happening in Scandinavia very, very concretely now, together with solution providers and financing investors. We work also very close with KPMG, so we are having joint events in COP27 with, of course, also a lot of input from the Nordics. But I think it needs to be much more focused at the COPs on cities' roles and how we can have cities being the really the forerunners in there and see what they're actually doing. And this is cross-cutting, not just COP. It's on a lot of these global arenas, because it's like cities talking to cities. But we need cities talking to the financial institutions, cities talking to the solution providers in a much more scalable version, not just this inside information meetings where we're talking to like-minded or working in the same area. Has been very much, it's the national states that is in focus, of course, representing its cities. But I think now it's the time to maybe turn it upside down and get cities to run this, because I think that's the only way we're going to get speed into the process of achieving our environmental targets and our sustainable development goals.
So will we see a new Arab Egypt or African Spring in Egypt now?
In every region of the world, there is a lot to do and a lot of good cities and a lot of work that needs to be spread out to others. So, but hopefully this would be a good result out of this COP, but also then in next year's COP in Dubai.
It was very nice to have you here in Transformers, Kari, and thank you very much for the dialogue today. And I hope that your travel to Egypt will be successful and get more inspiration for drive change. Thank you very much, Kari.
Thank you so much, Kai. Very nice to be here.
I'm Kai Embren. Follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn, where I will be announcing the future guests to this podcast. And you can expect about 2 programs a month, and each guest has a unique story of making business and society sustainable. So find out more, visit my homepage, kaiembren.org. Thank you for listening.